Hello, everyone. This is gonna be Big Mama Cece's Big Clerk Persona Guide. There's gonna be no gameplay in this video, so if you aren't interested in that, you can click off. But for the one person who's been asking, and for anyone who's going to want to play Keigan, especially if you want to try and get an S badge, I thought it would be nice to do a build guide for her because I don't really think there's any out there. So without further ado, let's get into it. So for the default Clerk build, I would suggest Detention and Trump Card as your final talents. Detention because she does have her chip recording, so theoretically with Tipping Point, you could maybe get away without bringing Detention, but her chips aren't as reliable as a Queen Bee or a Violetta, so I really wouldn't suggest that. And then Trump Card. So if you want to swap to Teleport for late game, if it's a map like Moonlit, or the main reason I bring it, so that I can swap to Abnormal if there's the last cipher and I get to have a sneaky little Abnormal, because as Keigan, you can record the Abnormal and play it again. It's extremely good. And also having Constrain, the cipher machine furthest away from you at the start of the game cannot be decoded for 30 seconds, is good on Keigan to stop that cipher progress, and Hunter's Instinct is just good on anyone. And with the Detention one, obviously it gives you inertia, which, I mean, I really think inertia should be built in, because everyone always brings it, but whatever. But also, I really like Carnival on Keigan. 10% attack recovery speed and 5% movement speed when the exit gate is activated. It's really good, especially with Final Judgment. Now next, you're going to want to bring Deteriorate to reduce decoding and healing by 5%, and then Panic to have an additional 2.5% for each injured person. Now, a lot of pro Keigans might not bring Impulsive because you can use those persona points for something else, but Keigan's charged attack is already pretty long and a good length that Impulsive really gets you some really nasty hits. I have some videos of Keigan that you can watch where you can see Impulsive getting me these hits, so I really recommend it. And it also gives you Overwhelm, which will give you more attack recovery. Keigan already has pretty fast attack recovery, so the more you can bring, the better. So, which is why I'll also be bringing Skittish. Now, Skittish is a talent I will remove if there aren't a lot of support or harass characters, but it's almost always very good on Keigan, because if it's the last cipher left, if there are 4 survivors left, someone's always going to be body blocking. So I always find this talent pretty good. And more on the attack recovery, at least one Berserker. I try to always bring one Berserker no matter what build I'm bringing, because again, that attack recovery speed is really good. Now, if you're a beginner Keigan, I really do recommend bringing Claustrophobia. If there are 4 or 3 active survivors, the exit gate is opened 65 or 10% slower. It's extremely helpful for newer players, and I even still use it to this day on certain team comps that I am less confident about. Then you have 5 more persona points. I, most of the time, will just bring a second Berserker, and this will be my basic Keigan build. Now, if there is a stunner on your team, but not necessarily a harasser, so let's say just a singular novelist, or maybe like a novelist and prisoner together, I will get rid of one of the Berserkers for one of the Rage, and this will be my build. And that's pretty much it for the basic Keigan builds. Now, if there is a harasser, most of the time I am going to say get rid of your claustrophobia and get rid of one of your berserkers so that you can bring addiction and mischievous. This is what I would recommend if there is like a batter on your team or an enchantress, or if there's multiple harassers, like if there's a forward and an enchantress, a batter and a wildling, something like that. Now, for antiquarian specifically, you can bring this, but sometimes I will get rid of mischievous and bring tolerance instead. The thing with tolerance, though, is that you kind of need to bring max tolerance for that big anti debuff, because then she'll barely even be able to push you. So if it's just antiquarian, sometimes I will remove my mischievous so that I can have max tolerance. But if it's antiquarian plus another harasser like enchantress, I'll just bring one tolerance and then addiction. But if it's like antiquarian with a batter, I won't bring tolerance and we'll just bring mischievous instead. Now, if it's a map with double decoder, or like a lanternist prisoner, something like that, I will bring famine. And if I'm even more scared of getting to endgame, then I will remove skittish and bring claustrophobia. So I have claustrophobia, impulsive, one berserker, and famine. Famine is kind of 50-50 on Keigan. It depends on maps and spawns, because it does delay decoding speed, which is really good. But Keigan is pretty fast, especially if you bring Trump card and have Hunter's Instinct, that sometimes you don't get the most value out of it, but it is particularly good in the end. Now, I kind of want to talk about some personas that I don't recommend bringing on Keigan. So, you can bring announcement. I will say one announcement is fine. So theoretically, you can have the basic build that I said, but instead of double berserker, go with an announcement instead. I personally don't bring announcement because you can easily check with inspect where a survivor is. But one trait I will never suggest on Keigan is wanted order. Keigan gets barely any value out of wanted order. She doesn't have the map mobility to really utilize it like someone like Geisha, Fool's Gold, Mary, Sculptor would be able to. And the movement speed debuff isn't the best for her. Like, if you wanted to bring Wanted Order on Keigan, the only one I would suggest would be Max Wanted Order, but you would have to give up a lot of persona points for that I just don't think it's worth. Impact, you can bring only if there are a lot of negative healing on your team. If there is like a perfumer, mercenary, and puppeteer, there needs to be at least 2 on the team for me to think impact is worth it. Because with Keigan, a lot of your slowdown you want is with the ciphers, not with healing. Next, we have Nostalgic. I have seen some Keigans bring this, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because Keigan's double down potential isn't as good as other hunters, just because she doesn't have that fast mobility to get right back to the person who just got unchaired. And I don't find double downs as important on Keigan, since you can almost always prevent one survivor from decoding. So it's fine. Next, I talked about tipping point. If you are bringing detention, you do not need tipping point, because the thing with Keigan's attack recordings is that they always do half of Keigan's damage. So if she doesn't have detention, it'll do a chip. But if she has detention, it'll do normal damage. So tipping point is useless on her. I have seen some Keigans bring Sadist, because there is potential in Keigan's camp with her attack recovery recordings. But I would only bring this if you are extremely confident in that style of camp. So you can bring it, but you have to be good at it. And Giant Claw, if there's a cowboy, I think you can bring it, or a gardener, but just bringing it even without those two, I wouldn't recommend. Keigan's basement can be good, but again, Keigan's camp doesn't have to rely on basement, so it's not necessarily needed. I've already talked about tolerance. You can bring it if there's an auntie, maybe even a female dancer, but that's kind of it. And you do not need after effects because, again, as Keigan, you're not going to be really going for double downs or slugs a lot of the time. You're going to be trying to chair survivors, and while that survivor is chaired, stopping the ciphers. And you do not need insolence on Keigan. It does not help her in the slightest if you're a good Keigan. The only thing it unlocks is blocking off recorded areas, which, if you are good at Keigan, you do not need. Now, Lingering Might. When this first came out, I actually did bring this on Keigan a lot. The only problem that I found with it is a lot of times it just doesn't get use in the match, or if it does, I only get 10 seconds of that 10% movement speed boost. It's just kind of 50-50. It can be useful, but it depends on map, characters, and just how the match is going. Exhibitionist you can bring, especially if there's a character like Mechanic on the team, for example, and she leaves her bot at a cipher. When you record your attack recovery recordings, Exhibitionist will make your attack recovery slightly faster for those so that you can get her bot down from across the map quicker. Same with Priestess, but I wouldn't say it's top priority. And I wouldn't recommend Street Sweeper because Keigan, again, doesn't really have that type of map mobility to really be impacted by that. It's not gonna help her like how Wanted Order is not gonna help her. And Hunt, while that 10% movement speed boost and obstacle vaulting speed theoretically is going to be really good on her, the thing with Keigan is that you are always going to be using her abilities or pressing a button as her. Very rarely will there be 7 seconds where you are just doing nothing but walking. So I wouldn't recommend. Wither, I wouldn't recommend, but I guess depending on how you camp, you can get use out of it. I bring Warp on Keigan, and because of that, I do sometimes hit a survivor farther from a chair and then warp back to chair. So this can be useful, but you just won't get use out of this like someone like Smiley or Geisha would. And you do not need destructiveness as Keigan. You have your pallet break and pallet throwing recordings. You do not need to break pallets faster. But confined space, that's a different story. And this is when I'm going to get onto map-specific builds. On Arms Factory and Sacred Heart Hospital in specific, I do bring Detention Confined. And that is because there are so many windows on these maps. While you do have window recordings, sometimes that's not enough to fully prevent these loops. So on Arms Factory and Sacred Heart Hospital, I will bring Detention Confined. Now with this, you are going to bring Constrain to stop early ciphers, and again with the Impulsive, Skittish, and Berserker. Depending on the map, If it's Arms Factory, I wouldn't really recommend Claustrophobia just because it gives you Control Freak, which gives you a 10% movement speed boost after dropping from a height. There are no heights in Arms Factory, so this can just go as a wasted point, which is something I don't like on Keigan. So instead, I will bring Max Berserker, and then depending on the team comp, I'll rather bring Famine, I'll bring an Addiction, I'll bring an Exhibitionist, I'll bring some Rage. Could even bring an Announcement plus 1 Rage. You can also put Deer Hunt on if you are one of the hunters who struggles with finding down survivors. But yeah. And then if it is Sacred, then I would recommend Claustrophobia since it is a bigger map. And you do get the value out of Control Freak when you're chasing in Hospital. And then prettily similarly, if there's Harassers, I'll only bring 1 Berserker, get rid of the Claustrophobia, get the Addiction Mischievous, or I'll do an Addiction Rage sometimes, depending on the team comp. You can also bring Hunter's Instinct if you want. Something like this. Or like this even, because Hunter's Instinct can be nice for that early game. But you don't necessarily need it. So yeah, I know it seems a little weird to bring Confined Space when you don't really need Wither and Destructiveness as Keigan, but it really does make a difference on Arms Factory and Sacred Heart Hospital. On other maps, I wouldn't recommend this because there aren't loops like that. Or if there are loops like that, the map is just too big to bring a build like that. I cannot speak. Anyways, because there's the one area outside of Circus Tent with the 3 windows basically back to back in Moonlit, so Confined would be nice for that. But then you'd be stuck with no trump card, so you wouldn't be able to swap to be swapped to teleport late game. You could theoretically bring teleport from the get-go, or just bring warp and hope you can stop the ciphers and the exit gate before you can get there. But it can be risky, so I wouldn't recommend it. But talking about Moonlit and double story maps, let's say you're really confident that your chase will be good and you won't get to endgame, so you don't really want Claustrophobia. I will still bring Control Freak on Moonlit, Lakeside, Ever Sleeping Chinatown, because that 10% movement speed boost is really good. Because Keigan's already fast and her attack recovery is already extremely good. So the more you can get, the better. So you can take that off, bring another Berserker. A lot of times I'll bring a build like this. An announcement. Announcement. Girl, I can't. Announcement is good, but again, you can easily see. So I'll bring this. My attack recovery's through the roof. It's just good. And I think that's all the personas. So if you have any more character specific build comp questions, feel free to comment, ask me about it. I'll do my best to answer. And I hope you can get some information out of this video. I know it's kind of long, gonna be boring, no background music, no nothing, just me talking. But I hope that this will help somebody. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please like, subscribe, comment, whatever YouTubers say. I don't know. Bye.